What is good, YouTube? It's MLS Week 30 coming up. Week 30. It's crazy to think the season has moved along so fast, and soon enough we're going to be gearing up for the playoffs later on this fall. But yeah, the season's winding down, and we have another preview here for the upcoming slate. And if you can't tell, as the jersey I'm wearing, it's in recognition of the international break going on right now, which means we're kind of going to get a very limited slate here. 6 games only on the docket for this Saturday compared to what would usually be 13, 14 because of the international break. So some teams still remain playing, and most of them who are going to have some key misses and players gone. So we're going to get into all those games. But first, let's just go over week 29, which saw a loaded slate, a lot of highs and lows, and more surprises. DC United winning 3-1 on the road to Toronto, getting out of last place in the East, which the bottom of the East is very, very tightly contested. And those 3 points did a lot for this late playoff push that they could still make. And then the Union giving Red Bulls their first home loss of the season out of all teams after playing a loaded schedule coming off a midweek loss and on short rest. They beat the Red Bulls. The Crew with some more late heroics. They beat NYCFC after New York tied it late 2-2, and they scored 2 more goals in stoppage time to win 4-2. Atlanta with revenge on Charlotte after Charlotte beat Atlanta on the road, and Atlanta beats them 1-0 late in that game. The Rapids in Dallas going blow for blow. Rapids won that one 3-2, and then Miami continuing their strong, impeccable supporter shield form. They win 4-1 on the road to the Fire. And then Real Salt Lake getting back to winning ways at home with their new signings, Noah Rongo, after his injury in the last game, but they get by the Revs 2-0. And Timbers getting their own revenge against the Sounders in the Cascadia Cup and winning 1-0 after the Sounders beat them in the previous match in Portland. And then the Dynamo giving LAFC one of their few home losses this season. I think the only other one was to the Crew. They win 2-0, and now actually we're going to get into it, but they play each other right away again this coming weekend because of a reschedule game. So to close out last week's slate, we had Sunday's matinee between St. Louis City and LA Galaxy. No Ricky Puig for that game, unfortunately. Marco Royce got the start, and St. Louis City ended up getting the late goal to win 2-1 to kind of boost their late push. They're kind of a little bit out of it, but if they win out with the attacking talent they've got now and how good they're looking offensively, then they certainly have a shot. Beating the 1 seed in the West definitely helps their cause. So we're going to get ahead into week 30 here soon. I'm going to have 3 best bets for you guys, including another 2-unit. The past couple weeks since we returned from the Leagues Cup break haven't been the best, but we also haven't lost too much. And the 2-unit last week especially was definitely disappointing. We had RSL and the Revs for the over. RSL was up 2-0 with about 35 minutes left and then nothing doing the rest of the way as part of a 2-legger. And yeah, meanwhile, the other one of the other 2-leggers we had that hit was DC Toronto over, which was 0-0 for about 65 minutes, and then we get 4 goals late. So that's just sums up the craziness of this league sometimes. But we're still up over 11 units on the whole season, not doing too bad for ourselves, and we're going to try to get back on track here. So once again, 3 plays for this one. We're going to get into every single of the 6 games, who's out for the international break, who might step up, and how that affects each matchup. So the slate starts off with the Crew hosting the Sounders, and the Crew have won 6 out of the last 7 games dating back to the start of the Leagues Cup. The only other result being a draw to NYCFC that they eventually won. And they've been red hot at home. They're one of the top 3 teams in MLS 100%, and especially at home they just have such a strong record. But I think if there was ever a time for them to slip up, it's here, and at least, maybe a draw. And the reason why is because of how many players they're missing due to this international break. We'll start with just an unbelievable player, their main guy, number 9, Cucho. He finally got his first call-up to Colombia, and that's a great sign for him going forward. But it's bad for the Crew. He's not just your basic number 9. He goes out into the wide channels, plays a lot of great balls, switching the ball and just getting other players involved. And that's going to be a big miss. And then also you have your top two starting keepers, first and second choice in Schulte and Hagen. Hagen, who as well was trusted more in the Leagues Cup and delivered in that final. And then you have Moreira out, one of your center backs for international duty, and then Admonson, who is on yellow card suspension. So that's two center backs. Your first two choice goalkeepers, Cucho, and then not even to mention Russell Rowe, who also got added late to the Canada roster, and then Mo Farsi, one of your midfielders. So, that's like 7 or 8 players out of your first choice kind of lineup. And, even though the Crew have been on this run, they've definitely been not great defensively, you could argue. I mean, they've given up even the first goal in games more than often than they'd like, and they've had a lot of kind of lapses of concentration defensively, and they've really just kind of just left it to late heroics more often than not, which they're really good at, and they're still a deep team despite these losses. But I think I still want to see a little bit more out of Sean Bost and Jackson if they kind of get into these replacement roles for this game, in the kind of starting roles now. And while you still have Rossi and Ramirez up there staying put, I just think this might be a bit more of a tactical battle, a little bit more low scoring, because Seattle, on the other hand, likes to play very balanced. And I think a lot of the results recently for them have just been kind of skewed, or the outlook on them has been skewed by how many L's they've taken to LAFC recently, who is just their kryptonite kind of team. And I'll be the first to say I have no idea how to read Sounders games for the most part, at least recently, from a total perspective, from a result perspective. But I think they're a balanced side. They have a pretty, top kind of tier defense. Their offense isn't really anything I'm in love with, but they're in a more of a position here where, that they have to kind of take things carefully, and I think they're hungry kind of to get a point in this one and think they can with all the players missing for the Crew. They really only have Nuhu out, one of their defenders, and then Stefan Fry, their first choice goalkeeper, who in a collision early in that Portland game they lost, suffered a kind of nasty kind of head injury, sort of. He's been in concussion protocol and he's been confirmed out, so he's kind of getting better from what I've seen, but just not ready to go for this one. And so those are really only 2 absences for them. They do have to travel from the West Coast from that last game, but I think this is one where it's on the Crew's replacements to step up, those kind of midfielders, to see how they can progress the ball. They're very thin in the back line now, and the third choice keeper is going to come up, so there can be moments of just kind of where the Sounders can take advantage 100%. Do I think they lose? No, but I think this could be towards the low scoring side, and I'm going to say this one ends 1-1. So we got the Revs taking on St. Louis City. Both these teams 13th in their respective conferences, but both are not out of it yet by any means. The East, especially in the lower portion, is very tight, and like I've talked about, 1 or 2 wins can really get you in that 9th spot. So still a lot to play for in these final 7 or so games for both these teams, and I'm attacking this one. I'm not going to dwell on the past, and this is the 3rd week in a row now I've taken the Revs, or involved the Revs in a bet, and the last 2 times I've been burned mostly because both one team has been blanked in their matchups. The first time they beat Montreal 5-0 on the road when I had both the score and the over, and then last week when we had them in the 2-unit 2-legger, we had the over in the Revs RSL game, and they didn't contribute, but they also probably should have given up 3 or 4 as well, and that ended 2-0. But anyways, here the 2-unit is the first play of the show, and I'm taking both the score and over 2.5 in this one for -120. I think this is a really good price, and I'm not going to dwell on those past matchups for the Revs. They're coming back home here. They have been on a kind of bad schedule in terms of they had to go to Montreal, then RSL out west. Now they come back home. But they are missing Bayrak Terovic, one of their star wingers, and then Arriaga a center back. So I think that actually leads to a better lineup for this team, a more attacking lineup. And then obviously losing a center back obviously doesn't help your cause in terms of holding a clean sheet. And so I think the lineup here would be Rioni, who got at the 9. He got 45 minutes in the last game in the second half, so he should be more match fit. Obviously, Carly still at the 10. And then I think you have finally Luca Langoni getting his first start after getting half an hour in the last match, and then about the same or so, maybe like 20 minutes in the Montreal match, the signing from Argentina. I think he slots in on that right kind of wing side. Um, and finally gets his first start. I've liked what I've seen out of him so far, and they obviously, I think this is the perfect time to kind of slot him in there. And then you have Barrero, who got about 30 to 40 minutes in the last game, so I feel like he should be starting over Boateng on that left-hand side. And I really like that. I think, especially against St. Louis, who has only held one clean sheet in their 13 away matches, they are still winless on the road, partially due to that fact. And they're also a top 5 worst away team in terms of the expected goals allowed numbers they allow. So really, to me, it's all about the Revs contributing here, because St. Louis, since they've signed their Germans, have just been an attacking juggernaut, results or not. 4 against the Timbers on the road. They just beat LA Galaxy, the number 1 seed in the West, 2-1. And New England as well. They've only held 2 home clean sheets in their 13 home matches, and one of those clean sheets was during another kind of international break like this, where they played the Red Bulls and they didn't have Lewis Morgan, their 9, and then Emil Forsberg, their star signing. So taking all that into account, I just feel like the price here as well, and the desperation both these teams are going to have. This is really a spot play as well. Like, I just feel like it shouldn't be this number. And really, it's hard to see either of these teams keeping the other one out of the net, because New England actually gave away one of their center backs, Kessler, to St. Louis, who just played his 100th match. And so that's going to be kind of a revenge angle for him, I guess. But still, that St. Louis defense is not great at all. And Brandon Bai being out also hurt them in that RSL match. I think he's still going to be out here. And the replacement there has really just looked, substandard. So I think if any team gets that kind of second goal for us, because obviously we need both to score, and if it's like a 2-1 score line or more, I think I would favor St. Louis to probably get their first away win of the season. But really, I think this should have no problem hitting the total. It's just about, more so to me, the Revs kind of finally getting back on track, especially at home, and at least contributing here, because St. Louis as well, the stats don't lie. And as well, 9 out of 13 of St. Louis's away games, this exact bet has hit, and 6 out of 13 at home for the Revs. So I think the players being out for the Revs just actually help the Revs in terms of finally having to force them into playing their kind of more first choice lineup probably. And St. Louis as well really still has to push for it as well on the road here. And I'm sure they're going to be wanting to kind of stamp themselves and finally get their first road win. So in my opinion, I think St. Louis probably pulls this one out, but I have I wouldn't be surprised to see the main total for this is, balancing on kind of a 3.5 anyways. So I just really don't see that hitting with one of these teams blowing the other one out like, in a 3-4-0 fashion like the Revs did to Montreal the other week. So that's going to be the start of the bets. And yeah, let's just keep riding it with the 2 units. So the Red Bulls trying to get back on track after losing their first home match all season, 2-0 to the Union. Kansas City on the other end, they had a bye last weekend, so they're on the extra rest here, but they did play that midweek game before last weekend in the U.S. Open Cup, and now they're in the final against LAFC. Red Bulls really, to me, play some of the kind of least attractive brand of soccer. They're very counterattack heavy. They have the least possession stats in the league. And now they're going to be without Lewis Morgan, probably their best number 9 option due to the international break. Coronel, their top keeper, who did give up 2 pretty savable goals in that Union loss, but nonetheless, you're without your first choice goalkeeper as well. And then Elier's out. And then Kyle Duncan as well picked up an injury in the last game. So not great. Forsberg also still dealing with that foot injury, still kind of uncertain about when he can get back, actually. And then Kansas City on the other end, only missing Agata due to the yellow cards, and then Afrifa due to the break. So not a strong team, anyways, especially defensively. So it's probably going to be like Polito, Tommy, Russell kind of up there. Um, but this is one that I could also see, Red Bull slipping up again and being kind of a sneaky draw vibes, because Kansas City, they are tied with St. Louis on points, but I just feel like I just have such a worse outlook on them in terms of maybe sneaking up into that ninth spot. Just they're too unbalanced. St. Louis as well is, but they definitely, obviously stockpiled on the attackers and have been looking really, really good as of late to boost their chances. So it's really about how Kansas City approaches the rest of this season, because obviously now they're in the Open Cup final, which they're going to prioritize no matter what. But in these last like 7 or so games, they could just be playing with house money. And, if they really approach it the right way, I think Red Bulls can also slip up again, because it doesn't take much to unlock Kansas City's defense, but it's, they're really running thin over there in New York. So I think this could sneakily have a lot of goals in it just due to that fact, but I'm going to go for another 1-1 draw. The Fire hosts DC in a battle of two of the East's lower teams, but DC definitely looking better. They just beat Toronto on the road, and with a win here, they would climb up from all the way dead last, 15th in the East, to 9th in that final playoff spot in the span of 2 matches. That's how tight it is at the bottom of the East. So the Fire also as well not out of it yet at all, but they're coming off a disappointing result once again to Inter Miami at home. Lost 4-1 after coming back to NYCFC 2-0 to 2-2. So really just flip-floppy. It's hard to trust the side in this one. I mean, I expect goals in general. But let's just get into who's missing. The Fire really not missing too many players, but there is one big one. Koutsias, kind of their backup striker, is out due to the break. Also, Ariel Lassiter, who they signed from Montreal, but really hasn't, I don't think, even featured yet, because one of the games he was out for yellow cards or a red, and now he's already gone again. So that's not too much of a wrench in their kind of plans and lineup as it has been. But they are missing Rafael Chihos, who is on a yellow card suspension. That's probably their best center back, but that's not saying much, because it's already a faulty back line. This team has given up 24 goals in 13 home games, so it's almost getting to that double, to a goal range, which is not great. And DC on the other end, they're missing Enau, that defensive midfielder they signed. He missed the last game due to a red, and then now he's missing again. So that definitely doesn't help their chances in terms of goals against them. And they're also missing Herrera, one of their wingbacks, and Peltola, a midfielder. So really, it's hard to pick a side in this one. I could definitely see goals, like I mentioned. But as you can already see here, I haven't gotten to it yet, but let's just get to it. Benteke, anytime goal scorer, is going to be the second best bet of the show. Plus 160. This is the joint leading Golden Boot scorer so far, and it's kind of been an equal split almost, basically, between home and away. So it's not like he's, when he has scored away, it's been kind of in bunches as well. So it's really not down to where he's playing. But this is not a trustworthy defense in Chicago. They don't really have too much of a home field advantage. The Miami game did record numbers because it's Miami, but besides that, they don't bring out too many people unless they're doing well, which is rarely, obviously. And DC has been traveling. Obviously, they did go to Toronto. Now they have to go to Chicago, but I expect Benteke to start. He basically plays 90 every game, so that helps our cause. And this attack is still pretty good enough. The players around him I like. You are missing Herrera, which could be a big loss in terms of the crosses he gets, but I still think Chicago is very vulnerable. And in a game that I probably expect to be, 2-2 or something along that, where one can probably steal a winner, I think if DC's scoring, a lot of it goes through Benteke, and usually his price is sitting around, evens or maybe a little bit minus 110 or something like that. So to get it at this price is pretty crazy to me against the opposition we're getting it at. And I think it's just a really good spot to take the value. Um, Usually I don't take a goal scorer on the show specifically. I'd rather wait for lineups, but he's basically a lineup lock. Um, and, I feel like this price will probably get lower or, worse um, by the time the game rolls around. So I'm going to take it now. And I think this probably has the potential for a shootout just based on how poor, um, both defenses are. But if I'm going to take the value here, I'd rather trust in one of the most prolific kind of game breaking scores in this league. So, yeah, we're going to roll with Benteke here. Houston hosts LAFC in a rematch of last week. Houston beat LAFC 2-0 on the road. The second one being from one of their recent signings in Anali, who just had a ridiculous burst of pace on kind of like a counter and scored a crazy, crazy goal. And in the meantime, he got injured celebrating, and he's now out for the year. Huge blow for them on that front, but, that's kind of something I think they still have the squad to recover and the depth. So I'm taking the Dynamo money line here for the final, best bet. Plus 120 in the rematch. I think they get the back-to-back here back in Houston, where they admittedly have not been great this season compared to seasons past. They just lost to Toronto the other week when we had them. But this is one of the highest possession rate teams, I think only below Columbus in the entire league. They're going to possess the ball. LAFC is one of the least. They love to counter you. And the big thing here is that LAFC is literally the most affected team out of any due to this international break. They have Boanga, obviously, one of your MVP candidates, out with Gabon. You have Oliveira, another winger with Uruguay. You have Bogusz, one of their star breakouts this season, finally getting his first call up for Poland. And then you have Chanot, one of your top defenders out, Luxembourg, I believe. And then Bonillo, who's been out for a couple weeks now with an ankle injury. I don't think he recovers there. That's another center back gone. And also Martinez, a midfielder. So you're left with really no true winger. You have kind of Tillman in there. And then if you want, they're probably going to run like Giroud and Kai Kamara as a two up front. And really, I think I just don't see how LAFC adjusts to that. I don't think Giroud is suited for that kind of countering style if the wingers aren't there, and they won't be. So I think LAFC is just going to really pack it in. These two teams are, two of the top 10 or 7 or so in terms of their defensive numbers anyway, so it could definitely lean towards an under. But Houston's going to possess the ball here. They're going to have chance after chance, it feels like. And the LAFC really won't be able to exploit that on the counter due to who they're missing. They just don't have the player profiles depth-wise to kind of still play that style. So it's going to be interesting to see what tactical adjustments are made, if any, out of LAFC and what kind of style they bring. But I think this is just too good of a price to pass up on Houston. That they're gonna have that home advantage. I think it has to break for them at some point, and it's really once again another spot play. These two teams just played each other, and LAFC still, as good as they've been balanced this season, they're still definitely more vulnerable on the road, and everything is pointing against them. Can they shock Houston again? I mean, Toronto did, but it's really about Houston putting away its chances. And I still believe in this lineup to do so. And with the price we're getting, it's just something. I'm going to fire on again, and hopefully they can finally come through for us. The Whitecaps and Dallas close out the slate. Whitecaps coming off a 1-0 road win against Austin, and Dallas losing 3-2 at home to the Rapids. The Whitecaps are actually tied for the third most road points on the season with 24. But at home, they've been okay. They've been scoring 2 goals a game at home, but the record is 5 wins, 2 draws, and 4 losses, which is respectable, but definitely part of why they're sitting only 5th, because if their home form was a little bit better, almost as good as their road form, I mean, they could be one of the elite teams in the West. But they're missing a lot of players here. They're missing Ryan Gauld due to Scotland duty, Pico with Haiti, and a bunch of midfielders, Ali Ahmed, Vite, Kubas, and then Ade Kugbe, who's kind of injured, not part of the international squads, but a lot of players out for them. Brian White also out with concussion protocol for a second straight week, and that leaves basically Kralak and Levante Johnson as your kind of main attacking options. Meanwhile, Dallas on the other end, not too great on the road. Only 1 win, 4 draws, and 8 losses. But they've been getting a lot of players back. Peter Musa featured in the last game after being a very late scratch off the starting lineup due to a foot injury, and he should be in line for probably a start here. Alan Velasco finally got his first minutes under him after a very long injury break. He was on the bench for that same DC game 2 weeks ago, but didn't feature at all. And then Jesus Ferreira as well has been making 2 sub appearances and could be in line for a start as well. Paul Arriola also coming back from yellow card suspension. So definitely more full strength lineup for Dallas. And with the Whitecaps missing so many players, I just don't really get why the line is where it's at. Obviously, Dallas only has 1 road win, but Whitecaps have definitely shown that they can definitely have shocking performances at home, and just especially with White now confirmed out. Really, I just don't see where this offense is going to come through. But Dallas on the other end is just kind of just a head case in terms of defensively as well. So this is one that's also hard to call. I could see this also being draw vibes. But Dallas could definitely come out and steal a win here. It's just that both are coming from, so it's not like, even though the Whitecaps are home, they have too much of a rest or travel advantage, because both these teams are coming from Texas in their last game, obviously with the Whitecaps playing Austin, like I mentioned. So a far trip for both, and really, if I had to lean, a winner here would actually be Dallas. But we'll see if I make an addition, maybe on the day of. But this is one that I have definitely been keeping my eye on in terms of like a double chance, but it kind of got out of reach for me. And a draw bet I would not mind with the value we're getting here, because Vancouver honestly will kind of just be very limited, and it's really about what Dallas can bring to the table, because I do really like, with Ferreira back, kind of how they've been clicking offensively. They've scored 6 goals in their past 2 games, home and away. So defensively there's still a head case, but I think this is one where they really won't be threatened too much. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Dallas win to pull off the upset. Thanks for tuning in once again, everyone. Make sure to like the video up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure to check out my Twitter as well for more MLS news and discussion. And if I add maybe one other bet for this slate, it's a limited 6-game slate, so not much to kind of be overwhelmed with, but still 3 plays for us on the slate. And we'll be back for next week, week 31, when we're actually, done with this short international break and back to the home stretch of the season with about 6 games left. So I'll see you then for week 31.